the return of Fireballs, the return of the Jumja Sticks, and Power Rangers visit the set of Deep Space Nine. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with your stars, Cirroc Lofton and Aron Eisenberg. My name is Ryan T. Husk. Aron, you look like you didn't quite agree with the
Power Rangers.
No, I was just listening. Power Rangers. Explain the Power Rangers reference.
Happy to.
Ah.
There they are. What do you think?
I think that kid keeps bullying me.
Come on.
Girl in pink.
Power Rangers right there.
She's a bully. She's a bully.
That's not the Power.
That's why I wasn't. That's why I wasn't in this episode. Was because of that girl. I'm just saying.
Half Klingon.
What is that?
It looks.
So.
Hello.
There you are. We see you. So for those of you,
got me?
Yeah, we got you. For those of you listening in, they can't see the video. We just got a picture of Cirroc and 4 other children, and there's the Cirroc's the Purple Ranger. We got the Red Ranger. Looks like the Gold Ranger, Pink Ranger, and Green Ranger. And they visited the set, and Cirroc was their leader.
Yeah, but that little girl, in the pink, she's a bully, and the shortest one on the far left, next to right of Cirroc, that's her cohort. I'm telling you, that's why I wasn't in this episode. I had to stay home. It was so hard to go to school.
You could read their nonverbal communication, or just Nog remembers them.
Yeah, the kid in green was pretty nice. He was all right. But the other two, those two girls, terrors. I'm telling you, they're bullies. Just saying.
So today we're reviewing In the Hands of the Prophets, directed by David Livingston. It is the final episode of season 1. And what do you think? Did they finish off with a bang or what?
I don't know if I'd say a bang. I liked it though. I did like the episode. I don't know if I would say it was a bang. What about you, Cirroc?
Well, I liked the episode. I mean, it was okay. There's a few things that I liked about it. I liked that Sisko had a featured prominent role in this episode. I got more so. I was looking for you in this episode. I thought you'd be in it. It just felt natural that you'd be in this episode.
Right?
He just called in sick for the whole week or something.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. I agree.
They dropped the ball on him because they established the school with the two of us. So, I don't see you doing school without us in there. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Or without explaining why you wouldn't be there.
Well, exactly. and beyond just the fact that Nog was in the school and a lot of this took place in the school, but on top of that, I think they missed a really interesting B or C plot in that how does Nog react to what's going on? Does he say, hey, I don't want to hear about all this stuff, about the prophet stuff? Or does he say, wow, that's really interesting, that's kind of like our rules of acquisition, or what was his perspective on that?
Yeah, he would have said, hey, well, if we're going to talk about spirituality, then we better start talking about the rules of acquisition.
Yes, exactly.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Joking aside, yeah.
No, I also like him saying, I learned to read for this.
Yeah. for this silliness. Yeah, and in a way, he could have been taking the side that the Federation takes in a way, right? That, hey, I don't want to hear about the spirituality. This is a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And then maybe Keiko and or you are going, hey, because of the conversation you had with your father, are saying, hey, we've got to kind of find a middle ground here. And then maybe Nog, since you're his best friend, offers a rule of acquisition that almost throws in an idea of how you find the middle ground. But with that said, that takes screen time away from the regulars. And Nog is literally just a recurring character. So all those ideas are probably too much for this episode. You know what I mean? Sure. They're great ideas, but I'm not a regular. Nog's not. I myself am not a regular on the show. Nog's not a regular character, but he should have at least been in the classroom, and maybe he even made a joke. Oh, great! Now I got to go work in my uncle's bar because there's no school,
Right.
School is better, and he should have been there with the kids with you, and it didn't even have to be anything more than that. But then they would have had to pay me. And, I was probably commanding about the same as Avery at that time. I'm pretty sure.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was a big thing for the first season. I had to come down a little bit in the second season. But the first season, I was very demanding.
I saw you and Ted Danson were actually tied for first place at that moment.
Yeah. Ted and I would have lunch at the commissary, on Paramount at times and talk about this. He gave me a lot of pointers how to negotiate
Contracts.
Yeah, with Rick. And I would tell him more rules of acquisition, which would help him in turn. So we had a tight relationship. Although tangent, years before I auditioned at Paramount for Ted Danson's TV show Down Home. Didn't last very long. But I was between me and this guy from New York. The guy from New York got it. It was my first time going to network, as they call it.
Are you guys watching The Good Place? Have you seen any of that, starring Ted Danson?
No, I haven't.
I'll take that as a no. That was a resounding, quiet no.
And we forgot to give a little plug for our good buddy JJ Lendl. So we should do that now before we continue to talk about
Absolutely.
In the Hands of the Prophets. So we want to give a little shout out to our artist who did the artwork for our show, JJ Lendl. You can find him at www.jjlendl.com. That's www.jjlendl.com. I'm looking for my artwork. I always have it here. Oh, here it is. Here's a piece of it here. We also have a lot of that stuff online. We have mugs and T-shirts and socks. You could literally have Cirroc on one leg and me on the other. Actually, I don't know if we have that. But Ryan can tell us a little bit about our teespring.com page if you would like, Ryan.
Actually, you absolutely could do that. You would have to buy a pair of Aron socks and a pair of Cirroc socks, but then you could mix and match like Punky Brewster 2 days in a row.
There you go.
Teespring.com/the7th rule. Just go to teespring.com or check out in the description box below and you will see the link. You can check out all of our online stuff. And Cirroc and I would like to thank JJ Lendl for providing us with a weekly 45-second beverage break while Aron talks. So thank you.
Throw me in.
I feel like I'm sitting under a bus right now, and I don't know how the bus.
No bus. I'm not driving this bus. But you know what I do? What I did like about this In the Hands of the Prophet was the fact that they used O'Brien's assistant and really played her throughout the season. She wasn't like a one and done character, and that's one of the.
I barely remember her though.
No, she's been consistently in the background.
Yep, and then she's had some scenes.
And she's had.
Yep. That's exactly it.
I'm gonna look her up right now just so that we know exactly how.
We missed what you said there, Cirroc.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I Discovery. We were criticizing Discovery for being quick with their characters.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so here she is. She was in 2 episodes. She was in this one and she was in last week's, which was Duet. So sometimes what they do is they know that she's going to be like some prominent figure in the next episode. So they incorporate a new character and kind of like what they did with Eddington, but they did that for a few episodes. It's really good that they planted those seeds though, because then otherwise if somebody's just introduced one episode, it's obvious that they're the ones that did, whatever it is that they're trying to do.
So there was another assistant though for O'Brien in previous episodes. And I wonder if they were working it back then, but something didn't work out with that actress for the last 2 ones. Because I'm with Cirroc. He's had this Bajoran assistant who's been had lines, interaction with him, not just working. But it must have been a different actress in the previous episodes.
Yeah, or maybe that one got scheduling conflicts or whatever, so they brought in a new person. But yeah, they kept it consistent. At least he had that type of assistant, which they were hoping maybe we don't even realize that it's a different person, very similar.
We go back to asking questions. This show definitely asks questions. At least it ended on a good philosophical dilemma and starts laying the groundwork for the future of our show and in the spirituality of the Bajorans versus the non-religious ideology of Starfleet. I do think they kind of missed a little bit of an opportunity to also put the ideology of the Ferengi in there. We were kind of talking about it, but there just isn't enough room, I would think, in a 45-minute episode to truly do that. It would have been interesting to hear, Nog, even if he shouted, well, hey, let's talk about the rules of acquisition if we're going to talk about that, if Nog was in the episode. But again, that's probably, that would bloat the episode, I'm thinking. And the idea of two conflicting ideologies having to coexist together is a very important debate. It's an important question and something all of us are constantly dealing with in life, and how we find that middle ground and the acceptance of other people's ideas. And I liked how they did this episode. I thought the pace of it was really good. I loved how Sisko, especially in the scene with Jake, was great. The father teaching the son about accepting others for how they believe and not forcing our viewpoint upon them or our belief system. I think that would be a little bit more our belief system. Although he was pretty, I wonder how much he later adhered to that, because he was pretty forceful also in trying to get what he wanted when working together wasn't working. And it was an interesting dilemma that he had. And Kira also, in the mix of that, kind of held her stance pretty strong. I felt a little too strong at the beginning. I felt she should have been more even, but I guess they wanted the character development between Kira and Sisko to kind of come around a little bit. But considering what happened in Duet, you would think maybe she would have had a slightly different point of view coming into this and enforcing religious ideology upon others that don't adhere to that ideology. And how do you mix the two in a school setting? And then I was thinking, where was Kai before? But obviously we find out what her real game plan was towards the end.
Well, and she's still a Vedic, which I had forgotten was she was Vedic when at that point. She becomes Kai later.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I keep saying Kai. You're right. She's a Vedic. I'm sorry. My mistake. Yeah. But Nurse Ratched, the amazing Louise Fletcher, who I just felt like Nurse Ratched is back in the future because she's a bit sinister and you can tell she's got these machinations, those Machiavellian machinations going on. I hope I use that in the right place. And you can feel she's not good. You can sense that something's not right with her.
I'm surprised she doesn't get brought up on charges for being a conspirator.
Because there's no proof. There's no proof that she's a conspirator. No. There's only theory that she's a conspirator, But wouldn't they have been able to recognize that the assistant to O'Brien, how do you say her name? Neela, I think it was. That because they always have, we saw so-and-so made it to Pylon 4. There is no Pylon 4. I always say Pylon 4. Level 4 or so-and-so walked into ops. Wouldn't they have been able to recognize that, hey, she was here? It's a little bit of Big Brother on Deep Space Nine. There's a lot of eyes in the sky on Deep Space Nine. They always seem to find out where people go later, but never in the moment. Just saying. It's just a question mark I have about the show.
So 90% of the episodes. There's almost always a murder in the episodes.
Yeah, murder seems to be used as a crux in the episode for them to investigate. I kind of feel like the writers at this point want to tell stories, but they're not sure how to tell those stories within and create a conflict to tell them. You know, it is, you're right. There's another murder, and O'Brien, who got a lot of this episode, was really the key to solving that. And then finding out Neela's involvement in that. And I actually, though, as a positive to the writers, they did a really good job of mixing the two and intertwining the two stories and making them one and the same, rather than it wasn't truly an A-B. It was really one story, though it was kind of set up as an A-B, but then it comes together towards the end. You know.
Well, there was also kind of a C story in there, which I kind of thought, and I know we mentioned this before, that their challenge with the writing was that they weren't meeting new lives and new civilizations or anything like that because they were in a stationary place. And so that's why, you know, they would kind of run out of ways to spark an investigation because, well, we got to do a murder again, murder and fireball. You know what I mean? They're not
and there was a fire.
They're not going anywhere to meet anything. You know what I mean? But there was like this little subplot in there that never really materialized, which was Neela kind of having a crush on O'Brien, and there was like a little flirtation.
Yeah.
And then
nowhere.
And then it literally not only did not go anywhere, it didn't have any point in the story. So that's something that they could have taken out if we wanted to incorporate, you know, these other things that you mentioned, because that
and Keiko foreshadows that in the beginning of this.
That's right.
Episode.
Oh, good call. Jum jaw. Jum jaw.
Yeah, watch where you put your jum jaw.
Hey, whoa.
Hey-o. Hey-o. That was a little like, wow, DS9.
Yeah. Be careful where you put your jum jaw.
Ooh.
That should be a T-shirt. Be careful where you put your jum jaw. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was true. It was foreshadowed. It's almost like they played with it, but it didn't have anywhere to go, and they forgot to take it out. Like, it really had no point in the episode unless he was instrumental in stopping her from killing Vedic Barile. I always fail on these names. And then there was, you know, kind of like, well, she had I don't know. It was point.
No purpose.
It was unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially unless he goes visits her in season 2 and goes, "Hey, I'm still that nice guy."
Conjugal visit. Is that what you're
Keiko's gone. She's been gone for the whole season. You know what's going on? How you doing?
Yeah.
I got my jum jaw.
I like it. Yeah.
What are you drinking, Aaron? Is that orange?
Waterloo.
Oh yeah, those are good. But what flavor is that?
Mango. So I'm waiting. I don't know why they didn't do this, but the Ferengi should have been all over the Vedics going, "Hey, am I a prophet? Want to touch my big lobe? Touch my big lobe. I might be a prophet too." But we never really.
I like Quark's line when Odo says they're Orthodox. And he says, "Well, then I need double girl." Like those Orthodox guys, they really.
And he said, "Dabo."
Yes.
Did you hear that?
Yes. I was noticing the same thing. You know how many times, I'd say it's about once every 3 or 4 episodes, we hear inconsistencies in how characters pronounce things.
Right.
You know, like one guy will say, like in the pilot episode, and Sisko says, "We're going to, you know, the Bajoran sector," and then or we're going to Bajor, and Picard says, "I'll have you at Bajor." You know, pronouncing it different. And this time, Quark himself, it says Dabo.
Dabo, that's
Texas.
right. Like cat.
Gotta get them Dabo girls.
But I think in the same line or in the same scene, he at the end says Dabo. I'm almost positive he
I don't think so.
reset it. Yeah, you'll have to listen to that again.
Possibly, I think so. Yeah.
And then
I did rewind it like 3 times to check that. Yeah.
And then so what happens, right? As we're learning how to pronounce these new words, we make errors, and he might have said, "Oh, well, that take I think I screwed that up," and so you might do another take and nail it both times, but they go back and use that one. So I have a feeling that's what happened, because I heard Dabo on the next one. But then why didn't they fix it in post? He could have easily have corrected that in post.
That's directing. I mean, and also it's up to the director and possibly maybe the script supervisor, I guess. But somebody's got to say, hey, it's Dabo, making sure that all the actors are pronouncing things the same. You know what I mean? Rather,
maybe the director didn't even know either. Maybe no one really quite knows until we establish it.
But then they got to have a uniform way that everybody's pronouncing things, theoretically.
So have we heard of Dabo girls prior to Deep Space Nine in TNG?
No, not prior to Deep Space Nine.
Okay. So it is the first time of saying Dabo or Dabo.
It was said in previous episodes, though.
Yeah. I think it was just a mental slip, and he probably corrected it in a second or a previous take.
Yeah.
But they ended up using that one.
I know Cirroc is livid about it.
Yeah.
No, I thought I'm not so much concerned about it, but I did think it was funny when Sisko jumped through the air to tackle.
Oh my God! It was all slow mo.
Yes, from underneath. It was like
that was so funny.
It's like a football commercial or something. I was like, what is this?
I wanted to hear the Bionic Man sound effect.
Yeah, that was a little corny for David Livingston.
I wanted them to cut to other Bajorans going.
No.
And the actor fired her phaser a second time at the crowd to her right. You know, there should have been some. Oh, you know.
Yeah, and none of the Bajorans in the crowd.
Yeah.
Were reacting to her shooting a phaser.
Exactly.
Nobody slapped her arm down or said, "Hey."
No, nobody. Although when she was coming through a crowd, if you go back and watch it,
somebody bumps her hand. Yeah,
she's like,
that's how she misses the first time.
She was so dramatic. Ah, you son of a! It was like riot was about to start. It was pretty funny sometimes watching those, the background and how they work. But let's talk about something. Let's talk about the idea of instituting religion in the classroom and then getting to a point of saying then all these kids are going to leave the school. And one thing that wasn't addressed was maybe some Bajorans being conflicted also. Like, well, I want my kids to have an education. It's almost like they all just fanatically went, oh, yes, we're going to rebel and we're not going to go to school because you're not teaching religion. And yet prior, there was no question of religion. Religion never came up. The spirituality of the Bajoran people. Only when she started talking about the wormhole. And then second of all, which one of those little punks ratted Keiko out? Because one of them had to go home and go, Mommy, oh my God, the teacher's teaching me something completely different about the wormhole. So, I
thought it was weird when she walked into the classroom altogether.
Yeah.
You would think the teacher would stop teaching and say, what the hell are you doing? Can I help you?
Yeah, you're not the principal. You're not the boss of me.
Yeah, so what are you doing here would be like the obvious question.
And if she went there, that was right during the whole wormhole presentation, and then she used that. I mean, what was her motivation prior?
But what I did learn that Sisko and Dax created the wormhole, though, and that was something I don't think we knew before this.
No, because they did discover it in one of that first or second episode. You know, like they're on a runabout or something like that, and it was like unstable, and then that's when the prophets visited Sisko, something like that. That was the second episode.
I think Quark should have used the title of this episode somewhere within his bar, and instead of prophets, PROPH, PROF, and it could have been a nice little play on the title. If somebody wins Dabo and it's like, in the hands of the prophets.
Real quick, we got to run to a break, but let's dive more into that. We also want to talk about just kind of the overview of the entire first season and how that went for us. And so we'll be right back with the seventh rule. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the seventh rule with your stars, Cirroc Lofton and Aron Eisenberg. I'm Ryan T. Husk, and we are talking about In the Hands of the Prophets with director David Livingston. And this conversation is on fire. As the French say, it's lit.
lit. And Cirroc has joined us via phone because it was in search of Wi-Fi.
He was on his motorcycle, so it's just easier to hear him this way.
I thought it was
was way too.
He was wakeboarding.
Yeah, I was cutting in and out too much, so I figured I'd keep a stable line.
Good.
So Cirroc, yeah, what were you saying? You were talking to us on the break about something.
Well, we've talked about everything on this episode, and there's a lot of things I feel like they covered. Aron mentioned the idea of religion and teaching it in school, and I think that was the overall message or underlying storyline, whatever they were trying to get across. I felt like that was the point.
Yeah, well, Robert Wolf actually made a comment in the official Deep Space magazine, or in one of those things, where he had a really good comment about this, and it had to do with enforcing your beliefs upon others. He said, this is Robert Hewitt Wolf. He said, "I have a serious objection to people trying to impose their values on other people. And that's what this episode is about. No one has the right to force anyone to believe the things that they believe." That's one of the beautiful things about Gene Roddenberry's vision of IDIC. And that was one of the things that we really wanted to hammer home here. Sisko does everything not to impose his values on the Bajorans, but Vedek Wynn is determined to impose her values on everyone else. And that was a key thing that I thought was interesting, because Kira also sided with the Vedek at the beginning. And then Sisko's speech, kind of has her think a little bit differently about that. And his speech was really profound about, I think we're more than just, we are the Federation and we're against you because we don't believe the same way. I think we've really worked hard to build a strong relationship among all of us, a trust and acceptance of others, an acceptance of others' ideology and their belief system, and finding that middle ground.
And to me, that's where Sisko, his character pivoted, because he was very accepting of Vedek trying to impose her religious beliefs. He even convinced me when I was kind of, trying to say, "Can you believe this?"
Yes, mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, and he actually defended her position,
right,
and said you have to see it from the other side. So I have to say, where Sisko pivots is when he says to her, "You messed up. That's where you made your first mistake. You just made a mistake." And I think that's indicative of Sisko's leadership. He waits to see what the arguments are, where the person is coming from, and he waits till most of the facts are in before he takes a position.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I like that about his leadership style.
And I don't know if you guys picked up on, after that scene, the camera stayed, he walked back, basically upstage.
Yes.
And Kira walked stage left, right, camera right. And all that was left in the middle was Neela, which was a little obvious to me. Then she's she's the bad guy, or not the bad guy, but the one fanatic.
We kind of assumed it from the beginning, right? We kind of assumed he was going to be the one.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I kind of was somewhere in the middle of was it kind of showed Vedek Wynn a bit fanatical, and also a bit
power hungry.
Well, yeah, not only that, but in the scene with Neela, when she's all, but they're going to kill me. They're going to do this. I don't know if I should go through with this. She's like, well, that's what the prophets have laid out for you.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Whoa, and one thing that was,
and that's why I think she's an accomplice to the murders. Especially of the guy who was inside of the hatch area that melted or whatever.
Henson.
Yeah, she would have been indirectly responsible, at least had knowledge of the murder.
Oh, no, absolutely. I just meant that they couldn't prove it. She is absolutely the orchestrator of this entire, I don't know if you call it a coup, but
it's an uprising. It's an uprising.
Well, it's really all political and has nothing to, and she's using religion to control and manipulate other people. And that's a pretty bold statement that the show is making also.
And there's another statement they were making as well when Sisko went to visit the other Vedic on Bajor. That Vedics told him that the prophets teach us patience, and Sisko said they must also teach you politics. And I like that line because he actually says that people can rationale their beliefs by however they want to. Of course. Essentially. And they can find,
And we still see that today. That's another amazing thing about our show also, is these little elements that they're putting forth in the season finale of season 1 of DS9 are still prevalent today. And it's going to be even scarier, I think, to some degree, as we watch the next several seasons and we discuss this, and how many elements and how many questions are going to come up that we're still asking today. And my hope in watching the next 6 seasons is that some of those questions will be better for today, that we're not repeating, that we've improved, that we've got to move forward at times also. We don't want to keep dealing with, these kinds of issues in life. How do we actually move forward and take the stories and the ideas that are brought to us and do better in our world? When do we start making those choices? It's a little.
And you know what? Taking a quick inventory of like all of the other series, I feel like maybe Deep Space Nine out of all of them has the most relevant themes. Next Generation, Voyager, they all had really good ones, original series. But I think that if you go back and look at all of the series and all of the episodes, Deep Space Nine will have the most themes that are still kind of relevant and important today.
Yeah, one of those things that I thought was really stood out in this episode was how politics plays in such an influential decision on people's decision making.
Yes,
and how they, what levers are pulled and how people are manipulated only for the basis of politics and not for any other reason.
Yeah.
And that's actually, obviously it's still part of what we're dealing with in today's headlines. Is people, motivated to make a political stance as opposed to an ideological one of just right and wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to kind of talk about how this show capped off our first season of DS9, and what each of you guys think about that. And do you feel it capped it off well? There's some issues I have with season 1, as much as I enjoyed it and had a great time in season 1, but I feel a little let down, and then I feel that they did something really good also on this season finale.
So you're talking about the finale itself, not on the season itself.
Yeah, but we can lead into that because you wanted to talk about the season itself, right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
And I think some of the issues and some of the positives that I have with this final episode can easily translate to the entire season. I feel the best thing that I liked about this episode, outside of the questions it was asking in about religion, although we could argue that we still never found a solution to teaching spirituality in the classroom for the Bajorans. There still wasn't a solution, because that was just the surface game that Kai Wynn was playing to get to truly get what she wanted, which was to be the next Kai, right?
I did want to ask you guys, speaking of which, with respect to that point, what do you think on Deep Space Nine would be the best solution? Should it be that Keiko says, blah, 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 the wormhole, and now with the Bajorans here, they believe that blah, 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 blah. Or, you know, just, and let like informational, not saying this is what you should think, but just specifically say the Bajorans believe this. And then the Bajoran students could be like, yeah, that's what we believe, you know, or whatever. Or do you think that they should do, because I think it's like 3 options. I think the second option is like just an entire, you know, chapter on, this is a chapter on Bajoran religion, for example. Or the third option is just like, hey, we're not going to incorporate any Bajoran, nothing. If you want to, that's like a Sunday school or a Saturday school kind of thing. And then they have like one of their Vedics come and teach their teachings to the Bajoran kids. And, you know, human kids are welcome to join if they want to like listen in or something, but it's outside of the Federation school. Which of those do you think is like the best option?
You know, that's a good conversation, but I don't know if we have enough time for that whole conversation for our second part. And the reason is because somebody gave a good argument back when she said, no, I teach science and science says this. And then I think it was Kai or
it was Kira. It was Kira
that said, well, that's your perspective. My perspective says something different. And that's what makes it hard to determine what to truly teach. Because if somebody's questioning the science that Keiko is teaching, as in, well, that's not really the science. That's just your perspective of what the science is. Then that's now what she's basically saying is, no, Keiko, you're teaching your philosophy, right? So that was a really good argument back on, ooh, is she teaching her philosophy, or can she literally say, no, here's the proof that this is why science, because 2 + 2 = 4, and this is how the wormhole opens, and this is how it closes, and that's what I'm teaching. And if she could then prove that, which I think she could, then I think a Sunday school where you can go learn the spirituality and the religion that the Bajorans generally follow, as well as a special class separate on another day where you can learn the rules of acquisition, would be very important to allow others to choose, I guess, those philosophies or ideologies to learn outside of school. Like we, you know, it was a really good conflict in of itself, you know?
Yeah, and the other thing I would add is that we as the viewer, as the audience, know that the prophets are actually real, and that they spoke to Avery through Sisko, and they've been present. So we actually, as the audience, know that there is some truth to the prophets existing. True. So her teaching that wouldn't necessarily be against facts.
Right.
I think she could teach that, you know, the prophets or the entities, as she called them, and Vedic was saying the entities are the prophets. So I think that's where their argument was. You know, one person calling it the entity, the other person calling it the prophet.
Or the aliens, right? One said they're aliens.
Yeah, right.
That's what it was. That was the good argument.
So that might be option number 4, is where they say, hey, here are the facts. There are these things that happen. There are these things that exist. Some people believe it's the prophets or gods. Some people believe they're alien life forms or whatever like that.
Right. And I would also think at this time period, right, we've evolved also in a different way. And I was thinking to myself, Starfleet and the humans, if you will, must have learned how to deal with religion and the ideology that many different people believe in. If we go all the way back to our current time and all the myriad of religions that we currently have in our world, if we've gotten to a place where some of that has changed, there was a time period where we learned how to accept and move on and kind of like, I'm struggling on how to say this. What was that process that we got to, as Vedic Wind said to Sisko, what did she say? You're soulless, you're spiritless.
Yeah.
Right.
Soulless.
So if that is the Bajorans' perspective upon Starfleet, right, that that Starfleet in of itself has no religion, no spirituality, how did we as humans get to that then? How did the process of all our current religions just completely vanished. Now, I'm ignorant to all the other Star Trek shows that may have dealt with that, which would at this point only be TNG or the original series. And I don't think the original series dealt with that in the late 60s. But I don't know if TNG did. So
Of religion?
yeah, right?
There were a couple on Next Generation that were really good and poignant. One of which was when they visit a planet. You know how like there's always a murder on Deep Space Nine? On Next Generation, they always visit a planet. And basically these guys believe in a god, and Picard says there's no such thing as a god. And they say, well, no, we have proof. And then this lady comes down and she says, yes, I am their god, and I can prove it. And she kind of goes like this, and the earth shakes. You know, and she goes, hey, I'm a god. And then Worf says, you are no god, you know, and she turns into Worf's devil. Maybe she says she's the devil, not a god, but she turns into the Klingon religion of the devil. I don't remember what, Fakor, I think it's Fakor, something like that. And so she turned into this monster thing, and he's like, how is she the devil, you know? Anyway, the point is, they eventually find that she's on, that there's a hidden ship behind an asteroid. And they've got all their, you know, they've got like laser beam down to the planet to where they can create an earthquake, or they can create a hologram around her that makes her look like this. And the way she controls it is with the blink of the eye. You know, she just kind of goes like, do this or do that. She does these little communications up to her ship.
She has the Google glasses, the Microsoft glasses.
So, yeah. And so the way they prove it to the people on the planet is Picard says, well, what if I were to tell you that I was also a god? And they're like, no way. And he goes, watch this. And he makes the earth shake, you know, and then he turns into this stuff. And because now the Enterprise is doing it, her tricks exactly.
Right.
She tries to do it back, and her ship's been disabled, so she's revealed as the fraud. But there are a few episodes kind of like that are pretty, you know, pretty interesting in that regard.
I think it would have been, if there was time in this episode, interesting for when Sisko's called out as being lacking spirituality, being soulless, and I wish I could remember the words that she used, that maybe he brought in information of how we've evolved from religion to where we are now on DS9, because that part is still missing in my brain. If we're here in 2019 with a myriad of religions, and some most coexisting together, but some fanatical in different aspects throughout different religions and what have you, how did we evolve from this to where we are in Star Trek? That's a question I have, that I'm trying to wonder, was that ever explored? If it hasn't been explored, and then to me, I'm wondering, how did we just become absent of religion? And it would have been great if Sisko said, you know, and made a comment back to where spirituality, how it's evolved for us, or for humans, if you will. And then of course you have, you know, the Ferengi's own ideology and religion of that they adhere to, or their ideology. It's a fascinating conversation, and it's interesting that Kira at the end tells Sisko, you're not, or does he say to her, I'm not Satan, or you're not Satan, which is a very Christian ideology from you know, the Testament.
Yeah, Sisko
right?
says it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sisko actually says it himself. I'm not Satan, he said.
So would Kira know who
That's
Satan
right.
is? You know, would Kira Satan? Who's Satan? You know, which was a small thought I had when he said that.
You know, this discussion has been gone over many times in a lot of the groups, you know, the fan groups, and it's actually a popular misconception that there's no more religion in the Federation, in the Star Trek.
Right.
There's
Excellent.
actually a lot of religion. They actually mention, I don't remember the exact mentions, but they, in the current times, you know, like Next Generation or Deep Space Nine, they say, oh, I got this from a shaman, or I got this from a bishop, or whatever it is back on Earth, or something like that. So it still exists. They're just probably in much smaller pockets, you know, and then there's Chakotay, who has his vision quests and things like that. So
See,
there is religion there, but clearly the Federation is a science, is a group of science, you know.
so that would have been wonderful then in that scene for Sisko to actually use that and say, oh, we're not soulless. We have a variety of ideologies and belief systems. But the difference between you and I is we've learned how to coexist, where you have not. And that,
what I found hard to believe was that Vedic Wynn was questioning Sisko's soul and his beliefs when in the beginning of the episode, she was saying it was an honor to meet him because he was the emissary. So if he is the emissary and he is literally a figurehead or a part of her belief system, whether willing or unwilling, he's somebody to be, respected and chosen by her own set of
revered
prophets. A revered person who has been chosen by the very prophets she worships. It seems awkward to me that she would then turn around and say, "You're soulless and you don't represent what's going on."
I thought the same. Yep.
Big points for
that would be like a blasphemous.
Yeah, no, you're right, because that's totally true. I mean, she needs to be revering and respecting him. He's at least on her level as far as importance within.
But maybe she didn't because he hasn't accepted it. Because she says that often. It's too bad that you can't accept who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't open up your mind to this.
But that only leads to the fact that she has accepted it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if she's totally accepted that he's the chosen one from the prophets,
right,
then she would have a little bit of. I think she would have approached him differently and without the kind of abrasiveness that she did.
But I could also believe that she doesn't believe any of that, and she uses religion to get power. So you have an archetype of a character that isn't religious, that isn't spiritual, but uses religion and spirituality to control others so she can retain the power that she desires.
That's a very good point, Aaron. Very good point. I like that.
Yeah, I think she does believe in her religion, though. I'm trying to remember.
We don't know yet. For Cirroc and I, though, we don't know yet, right?
Correct. Yep.
So at this point, I would be So at this point of where we are in our show, I'm looking at Nurse Ratched, and I'm thinking to myself, "Ooh, you're a snake in the grass.
Yeah.
You are temptation. You are evil.
Literally a murderer. Literally.
Yeah, literally. You just want power. You are not a true Vedic. You are not a true Kai. Like Kai Opaka, I believe wholeheartedly that she is a spiritual woman that believes in her religion and her spirituality and the prophets. But Kai Wynn is a manipulator, a charlatan, and a huckster.
She's a politician.
Yeah.
She's a politician.
She's a politician. And the other thing is, the person they killed wasn't a Cardassian. The ensign that got killed was not a Cardassian, so he was not like a sworn enemy of them. So it's like almost like he's an innocent victim.
And on a side note, since you said Cardassian,
an
early idea for the first season finale was to be a crossover with Star Trek The Next Generation and have Sisko, Picard, and their crews work together to fight against a Cardassian, should I say Kardashian invasion.
Man, they should have done that. They should have done that. That sounds glorious.
Right? Doesn't that sound really interesting?
But you talked about, Ryan, earlier. What is the overall? What do I walk away with as a overall outlook on the season, and how do I feel about it? I feel like they've been developing characters really well. They've established that there is conflict between the Federation and Bajor, and Sisko has earned his throughout the season has earned the trust of the crew by his decision making.
Do you feel like, what do you feel is lacking so far? I mean, we've had 19 episodes.
Dax. Sorry. I spoke over while you were talking, which was rude. But right away, the first thing that comes to my thought is Dax. There is not enough of Dax, not enough of Bashir, And I feel pretty solid with Sisko and Kira. And we've set a good tone between the two of them, a good dance, if you will, a good duet. And Duet stands as my highlight episode of season 1. But I feel like Dax has just kind of been in the background. They really haven't explored who she is and what her capabilities are and what her conflicts are. She's just kind of been that person that just kind of comes in and goes, well, Kira, you just have to believe or whatever, you know? And we had a little bit of O'Brien, which was nice. He's kind of set in that way. But you know, you can only do so much with 19 episodes, I guess, right?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm missing. I'm missing some of the action and special effects that the new shows have. And I feel like I actually feel them stuck on a station, and I see the writers wanting to go outside and kind of give us a little bit more. So I feel that's the only thing I feel like we're missing. And there's a lot of slow storytelling and character development, and it's really great. But at the same time, I feel like I'm missing more action and, you know, fight scenes, battle scenes, or traveling to other planet scenes. So
you are. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Say that.
That's what I feel is missing. Yeah.
So you are basically reiterating the biggest complaint that fans of Star Trek had of our show, that it didn't have this action pack going somewhere, conflict and dealing with these kinds of things. And instead we have more character development and more building blocks, more foundations being set. We're still dealing with the foundation of our show. And maybe that's why we get to the argument where they fight for the Defiant. They want the Defiant to help them get off the station and get some exploring conflict.
Rightfully so, I believe. Rightfully so.
Well,
so I can say I do feel that I'm missing a little bit more of a higher tempo of pace. I would like.
I agree.
That's true.
A higher pace.
You look, like, for me, I look at it from like the whole, I've seen the 7 seasons, whatever. So I'm enjoying like all these little tidbits. But if I look at it from somebody that just watched the first season, it's 1994 right now, or 1993 or whatever.
No, you're right. 94.
And they're sitting there thinking, dude, they can't write 7 seasons of a murder mystery. Like, they're going to, and the writers are probably thinking, dude, we're running out of stories quick. We're writing ourselves into a box here. And that's why they start kind of expanding into, you know, adding a Defiant, adding the Dominion, really spreading their wings, because otherwise, there's no way they can keep this up. They can't.
You know, I was watching this thinking, and maybe you have an answer for me, Ryan, in the world of Star Trek, but how come there is no alien threat like the movie Alien? Like, how cool would it have been Sisko walking on the promenade and the alien from Alien smacks into the window of the hull of Deep Space Nine, and now they've got a monster. DS9. So
stay tuned for season 2.
Okay, I can't wait.
So we're gonna have to run though. Sadly, we're out of time here.
That's not a good place to stop.
But we'll pick it up. We can finish off the last juicy morsels in the free.
Give a little extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, we'll check out the free for all. We'll have some fun. But there's a lot of meaty chunks to discuss in Deep Space Nine, because it's the best written Star Trek series ever.
Like my mom's spaghetti.
And those of you joining us, thank you all so much. For Russ Haslage, Aron Eisenberg, Cirroc Lofton, I'm Ryan T. Husk. As always, remember the 7th rule, please.
7th rule.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 7th rule free for all. We are joined by our Trek tech with the best hair in the internet, Heather Jordan,
universe,
all the way from the Enterprise.
The old school Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Red alert.
That's the New York stages?
I think it's Homer Frizzle. He sent me this photo. I think he said it was Ticonderoga.
Yep, that's got to be it.
Say that 3 times fast. Go.
Ticonderoga, Ticonderoga, Ticonderoga.
Woo! Smoking.
All right. Good job, Heather.
That was pretty good, Heather.
So what we wanted to do, we wanted to kind of give just a full review of our final thoughts on season 1. I kind of wanted to know what was the thing that you liked just the most, and what was the thing that what needs improvement? We'll start with Heather. Season 1.
all of season 1?
Yeah,
Oh,
what
man.
gets an A plus and what needs improvement? What's an opportunity to grow?
Well, I think that they really did a great job exploring, the difference, especially, oh my gosh.
Especially that, huh?
She looked like
Yeah,
she's getting ready to
especially that.
sneeze. She's
That's what
allergic
really
to
pushed
that
this
set.
season over
No,
for
I
everybody.
think Kira's like emotional and like her conflict between being part of Starfleet, or at least interacting with Starfleet, following Starfleet rules, and then also, dealing with the Bajorans, and her conflict with, being kind of stuck in between two different cultures. What now?
Yeah. What are you laughing at, Aaron?
I don't know, Brian. What are you laughing at?
Cirroc, why aren't you laughing right now?
I'm not laughing.
So,
We love you, Heather. We love you.
What do you think? No, I know it's kind of not fair that we've been talking for like an hour, and Heather's been waiting, and then we just lump it all on her and say, "Okay, go."
That was you, man. That was you. Don't
the
drag me
royal
down with
we.
you.
It was the royal.
Don't drag Cirroc and I down with you. That was you. You said Heather.
That was, we all made that decision. I thought.
Okay.
No? I thought that was all of us together. What do you think, Cirroc? What gets the A plus, and what needs improvement?
I'll say that for me, the A plus goes to the storylines of Kira and Sisko, and Odo and Quark, and I think they've done an A plus job of developing those characters and the relationships between them. I really think that, and this just kind of occurred to me, one of the things that stands out in the original series is the contrast between Captain Kirk being this kind of emotionally driven character and Spock being the logic driven character. Mm-hmm. And now in DS9, I feel like Kira is that emotionally driven character, and Sisko is the logic driven character. And I like that dynamic being played out, especially between a strong female lead and a black male lead. And I feel like that tension is really well played out throughout this first season. And I also like the nuances between Odo and Quark, the playfulness, the playful hatred that they have for each other, or animosity. And I think they've done a really good job at those things.
I concur. Yeah. I concur. I can't really add anything. There's a few things I guess I could add.
Well, hang on. I want to hear what Cirroc thinks needs improvement.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was going to be another part 2. Okay, go ahead.
We could do it all.
Well, because I wanted to add to some of his good stuff there, though.
Okay.
Go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
He said that I'd like to comment on. In comparing the original series with DS9, as Sisko as the logical, Sisko's also emotional though. And Kira does represent that emotional side, but I think there's a slight difference in the contrasting of the four with Spock and Kirk and Sisko and Kira. I think I think you're spot on in recognizing those two comparisons to both the shows, but I believe there's a slight difference in the fact that Kira is coming from a place of coming out of a war, dealing with post-traumatic stress, as we learned in Duet, racism. And Sisko is coming into this environment as a mediator, as one to bring people together to move forward, as we learn in The Hand of the Prophets in this last episode, to not just to protect their border per se, but to build a strong, positive relationship between Starfleet and the Bajorans. And him navigating through that and building up his crew to be confident, trustworthy, and to be leaders in of themselves is what truly makes him such a great commander, character, and individual, as well as a father. I feel that Sisko is one of the most colorful leaders of Star Trek to this date of where our show takes place. I haven't watched all of Voyager, so I can't comment on Janeway, but he is, to me, the most interesting character because of what he has to do and how he's doing it. So I take what you say as in the contrasting characters, but I think they've done a better job because there's more colors within that contrast than I think they did in the original series with Kirk and Spock. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
Sorry. I was going to say that I wanted to add something to what DS9 did right, and that was that they didn't take the two of the senior officers, like, you know, we have like the really high-ranking senior officers, and they didn't put them in a relationship, which, you know, they didn't have Kira and Sisko having like a sexual tension. But, you know, if you look at the original Enterprise, there was Troy and Riker, and they had a relationship.
Next Generation. Well, the original series had Spock and Kirk had a lot of sexual.
Basically, it was Caligula on the Enterprise.
But also Voyager had a relationship between Chakotay and Janeway, and it wasn't followed upon, but it was always there because it happened kind of in that one episode where Chakotay and Janeway got stuck on the planet because they were sick. What now?
Yeah.
Is my mic making sounds again?
Oh my God. It's just, we're so juvenile. It's just such a huge distraction. Yeah. It's
my mic, okay?
It's not fair to you because you're making these important points about Star Trek, and Ryan and I are busting up.
No, Heather, I have to agree with you on what you're saying, and I'm glad that they removed the element of the sexual tension, at least with Captain Sisko, because it makes him free to make decisions outside of his, outside of the realm of lust or love, and he makes it based on the information, on the facts, or what he's feeling, as opposed to, trying to cater or be loving or some kind of relationship dynamic. I like the fact they don't go there.
Well, I also think it would be more difficult, or maybe not, because they probably did it in TNG. I don't know, but with him as a single father too, and losing his wife and your mom, so only 7 months ago, right? Because in the episode he says, "I've been here for 7 months." Yes. I think it wouldn't be honest to have him, "Hey, what's up, Kira?"
Yeah, he still would be in mourning. He would still be kind of recovering from that loss.
Absolutely. Yeah, and O'Brien is married, and the only other main character is Bashir, who is hitting on everybody and even hitting on Quark. So I think, though, when you see more of Nog, you start to feel that sexual tension between Kira and Nog. I think that's pretty prevalent.
Between Nog and everybody, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nog and everyone. There was a couple Dabo girls, and I think, I was pretty hip in the Mirror universe, too. But that is a very good point, though, Heather, because it doesn't turn into this melodrama of who's sleeping with who this week, which is really, really trivial. And I think instead they go to deeper issues and more questions, like they did in Hands of the Prophets, as well as Duet. They had a lot of good episodes that asked questions on, and Cirroc, as you have pointed out in Discovery, not asking a lot of questions. And it's nice to see that in our show, a lot of the questions that are being asked. Ryan?
And one thing I have to agree with you, Aaron, as far as the thing that I didn't like about it is the development of Dax's character. I'm not sure where she is.
Yeah.
In this last episode, she came across as very smart.
Yeah.
And she was intelligent. She told O'Brien, "Yeah, I'm going to isolate this. I'm going to figure it out." And I liked her as the intelligent person who's a go-getter who knows the answer more than the aloof kind of whimsical character that she's played in the past.
I feel like that the writers kind of missed the ball here, because I feel with Dax, they could have explored what it's really like for somebody to come together with a symbiote.
Who's lived so many lives. Yeah. Yes. She should have so much experience to bring to the table, having been, living this many lives. And not only, I feel like,
No, go ahead. I feel like, no, say that. I want to hear what you say. I feel like.
No, I feel like the version of her in this last episode where she knew more and she was with it and she totally was like, I'll figure it out. Let's solve the problem. I feel like that's more indicative of somebody who has been around 10 lives or whatever, how many lives.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I thought of in this season with her was she's new. If I'm correct, it's not that long ago that the symbiote and Jadzia have come together.
That's right. Yeah.
So I would have thought that they would have explored how that might affect the individual Jadzia as she adjusts to all the other memories and all the other lifetimes that are now a part of her own mental capabilities. And there's got to be an adjustment period, I'm thinking, and almost like in a multi-personality kind of a way. Yeah. And they could have played with that in many ways, positive and negative, and they didn't do that at all. And maybe they were afraid to. I don't know. That would be a good question for the writers.
Maybe they will in the second season.
It also goes back to what Terry was saying about in the documentary What We Left Behind. She had mentioned that when she was season 1 was like one of her first jobs. So she was going in as a new actress, and she really I remember she said in the documentary that she had to tell
Avery
to like chill it a little.
Go easy on her. Yeah, go easy on her. Yeah.
She couldn't match
that intensity.
Yeah. And so I feel like maybe that kind of had an impact with season 1 with them not, because she had mentioned she was so green, this is like she was learning that they really they felt like she couldn't project that yet.
Well, maybe we can have Terry come on the show and we can ask her. Yeah. Because I feel like I felt let down on Dax, and I felt let down on Bashir. I think he could have also offered. They could have done a little bit more, especially with some of the episodes that we kind of rated a little bit lower. They could have done a little bit better than that. But another positive, and I know Ryan wants to ask what other things you were disappointed with, Cirroc. But I would like to say I thought the writers did a very good job of building character without exposition. Oh, well, when I was on Planet 22, I used to do this. There wasn't any of that. All the character for the majority of the season was learning about them within the actions that they needed to do within the episode, or the episode them forward in a certain way.
You know what they call that in screenwriting? Show, don't tell.
Yes.
Don't tell me the person's smart. Yes, don't say, that's the smartest person I've ever worked with. That's the strongest Starfleet officer. Show us. Let us decide that person is smart.
Exactly. Right. I think the writers did a fantastic job of doing that. And I thought the actors, especially Armin and Renee, really, and Kira and Nana. I mean, I would say everybody, but grabbing a hold of their characters, and really committing to the choices and that they've chosen for their characters. Did a great job.
I wanted to add real quick to something that I thought that they did well, and that is from the perspective of, let's say it's 1993, we've been watching Next Generation for 5 or 6 seasons. Previous to that, we've been watching the original series, as a Star Trek fan. And you're watching this, and I think what they did really well is writing Star Trek stories, but within the context of a space station, which I was a little skeptical about. I was surprised upon this rewatch. I was like, actually, all of these are solid Star Trek stories. These are stories with themes that are infused into every episode, a different theme in every episode. And they never preach one way and they never preach another way. They present an issue, they present a good story with that theme infused in it. And we decide what we want, we discuss it, we think about it, and it's just so masterfully done. You know, even the episodes that are a little boring, that part of the episode, that part of the storytelling is always masterful. And I feel like that's what Star Trek has done better than any show ever. I don't think anybody does.
And also to piggyback off what you just said, Ryan, what I think is the best about our show is that the themes that they choose are still relevant to this day.
Yes.
So they bring up these topics of discussion that are literally almost feel like you're talking about today's climate.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel is so relevant about the show, is that you can watch the show and you're still left scratching your head like, wow, yeah, is it right or wrong to teach religion in class?
Mm-hmm.
Is it right or wrong for, you know, these various themes that they touch upon? And they force the audience to think, to literally think. And that's what I kind of like to do when I'm watching Star Trek. I want to think. I want to be challenged.
Mm-hmm. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's hear what you guys think needs improvement. We know Dax's character, maybe Bashir's character, could have gotten a little bit more development for good or bad. What do you guys think, you know, could use a little improvement after season 1?
Well, this is where I really wish that our show had the advantage of that this new Discovery show has, which is, you know, the kind of camera and special effects and those kinds of things. I feel like DS9 could have been that much better if we had the opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say have a bigger budget, but just have more to do with the budget. So I feel like Discovery, for example, as far as cinematically, looks like what I expect Star Trek to look like.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like it's a little stagnant on our show. You know, we had the set to do it. We had this elaborate, well-built set.
Well,
yeah.
But remember, Rick Berman was adamant about how it was to be shot, and Ira conceded that. I'm assuming conceded that fight in order to be able to write the stories he wanted to write. You know, and technology has changed tremendously.
Yeah, technology has changed. Yeah, the amount of the quality, the quality of the, you know, of everything, the cameras and the special effects, they've all gone up, and that's where the new shows have the advantage of you know, better conditions to tell the story. But that to me is one of the things that I think would have enhanced the show. And when you saw the digitally remastered stuff that Ira and the documentary filmmakers were able to kind of reproduce and put in HD, it gave me almost a sense of that upgrade that I'm looking for.
Right. But it's also shot a lot differently too, you know. And it would be really fun to take a few episodes of DS9, the big good ones, and see how you could reshoot them today, you know. That would be really interesting to do.
Yeah.
If you took Duet and reshot it,
Doesn't
looking
need it,
like
though.
Discovery, the story itself stands on its own. So what would it look like visually? That would be really fun. I miss Garrick. I think they dropped the ball on Garrick, though.
Yeah.
Only coming in at the very beginning for one episode, and he's a tailor. He must not be doing very good business. I think the jump job business is doing better than the tailoring. That's the only thing I could think of why we haven't seen him enough.
That's true. Why introduce him and then never bring him back? Yeah, I noticed that he was lacking too. They're missing him.
Exactly. And so, but you know what? I bet, and when you're sitting in the writer's room, as we've been able to watch on the DS9 documentary, which was really great, is they probably have a lot of ideas on the board, and they just go, well, we'll do that in season.
There's only so much to cover. Yeah, there's only so much you can cover.
Exactly. And so I feel like it's easy for us to say, well, we want more of this, we want more of that. You know, fans say this all the time. We want less of this, and writers ultimately make the choice because that's the stories they want to tell. And I think what they wanted to tell was really was more than anything was probably Kira and Sisko. And then Odo and Quark were reliable characters that they could go to keep the show kind of moving forward in a fun, kind of a way, as well as with your character and my character, Cirroc, at the small times that they did. And I think what we see in season 1 is the beginning of the garden. We're seeing the garden the seeds being dropped, and they're starting to put the puzzle together and what they want and build their garden. And that's what we see in season 1. And I think they did a very good job.
Heather, what needs improvement? If you're a producer and you're sitting there and they're saying, all right, this is kind of like the exit meeting, we've shot everything, we've done everything. What do you want more of in season 2 or less of?
Well, let me check first. How's my sound?
Fantastic. Less funny, but great. The worst part is, here's the problem that Aaron and I do, is that as soon as we hear that funny little sound, the first thing we do is we look at each other and then we set each other, like 2 kids at the dinner table or 2 kids in the classroom that need to be separated. They can't look at each other. The second they look,
it was like Cirroc and I in Vegas. What was that over? Remember that, Cirroc? When we were on stage?
Oh, yeah.
Adam Malin said something, and I looked at you and maybe it's me. Maybe I'm always the instigator here. And then I started cracking up, and then you started laughing. I forgot what it was, though. I can't remember.
It was the Far Beyond the Stars panel, and
last year.
I don't. Yeah, was it last year, right?
Yeah. Not this year, but last year.
There was something that was said, and the 2 of us looked at it. We couldn't keep a straight face the rest of the day.
Damn, I wish I remember. I didn't see that. I was watching that panel.
Photos. Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's all the time we have. We'll see you later. Just kidding, Heather.
All right.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying, Heather?
I'm not sure if, as a producer, that they would agree with what I have to say, but I think that they didn't take enough opportunity to revisit people. For example, Kaiopaka, we left her behind. Kira was devastated by that.
Left her behind.
Yeah.
What we left behind, Kaiopaka.
Yeah. Kira was devastated by that event. When she thought she died, she went through these emotions, and I can't believe that Kira just be like, okay, see ya, bye, and not go back, not go back to the planet, even if she couldn't go physically to see the moon or see, I can't imagine that she wouldn't go back to give her supplies, give her some communication, something.
Kira has an iPhone 2000, and she gave one to Kaiopaka, so they FaceTime all the time.
I'm sure but I feel because versus the other Star Treks where they're constantly moving, we understand why they don't go back to certain people.
Good call.
But with DS9, there's
no excuse.
Yeah, why didn't they revisit certain things? Even just a mention,
Could have taken a space Uber and visited her.
I feel like that was something that they could have done. They could have explored a little more, these ramifications of long-lasting ramifications of how of something that happened, an event that happened with these cultures that they're coming in contact with.
Or the old guy that they left behind on that
Ryan Keith's character.
Yeah, but what they could have done as writers is say, look, we leave this open-ended. We can come back and visit it someday if we want. And then as the seasons progress, they just never did.
Yeah.
But they can also say, hey, well, just because it doesn't show it in this episode, how do we know that Kira isn't contacting that person?
Yeah, that's
or
true.
that this guy didn't die? They're only covering certain stories. But yeah, it would be great. You're right. Even to have a mention where they say, Kira, I need you in my office. And she says, oh, sure. I was just talking with our old pal, blah, blah, blah. Oh, how is he doing? A little a little one sentence thing where we say, oh, that's cool, that happened to this person.
Sisko says, how's Kaya Pocket doing? Does she need anything? Like, you know, is she adjusting well? Like, just a mention. And Kira's like,
New
oh,
shoes.
yeah.
Because all that hiking, the shoes have worn out. I mean, what does happen to them? There's not like stores where they can get more clothing, you know, and they don't have a replicator there. There's logic that sometimes gets missed. That's a really good point, though. It's kind of that's another complaint I have, that they didn't do enough with Jake and Sisko. You know, I was complaining about that, going, hey, where are these little moments?
Yeah, we finally got it in this last episode.
Right.
Which would have been great to see throughout the season, because I like the insight into Sisko's thinking.
Yes.
It's a window into how he rationalizes things.
And I think his relationship with you is also part of that, because when we're parents, how we are with our kids affects us, what we do in the real world, because we're thinking about how that's going to affect our kid or kids. And I think they could have used that better, that relationship with him better, in how he deals with keeping the peace, bridging, building bridges, and what have you. And they could have done that with Kai and Kira. You know, they could have started an episode where she was having a conversation with Kai on one of the screens, and says, okay, well, it's great seeing you again, Kai. Thank you for that. You know, I wasn't sure how to handle this, and I'm going to, you know, whatever it is. And then she takes whatever she received from that conversation into the episode. It's a very good way, right, Ryan? I'm thinking as a writer, to establish a relationship between two that probably is continuing, that's influencing the main character in the decisions that she makes, similar to Jake with Sisko. So she definitely, that's a very good point.
I would have liked to see Odo morph more as well. It feels like he has the greatest ability in the world, and I've only seen it a little bit.
That's budget right there. Yeah, you're right.
Money.
So we're just about out of time here, but thanks for joining us for the entire first season. Next time we're going to be doing season 2. Yes, Aron Eisenberg.
Wait, you didn't mention the best thing of in the hands of the prophets.
Oh yes, we didn't mention it in our group. So Odo and Quark can't stop talking about our show.
Hey, love it.
On here. They can't get enough of our show. They say, Odo says, always keep your ears open. And Quark says, the 7th rule of acquisition. And the rest of us are like, God, these guys are always talking about us.
You know, it's funny because I never knew that scene existed because I wasn't in this episode.
Nor did I.
But you were in the episode, though, Cirroc, so didn't you read this?
Yeah, but I don't read. I read my lines.
Oh, gotcha.
So check it out for yourselves, guys. We'll post it on the page, too. Check out the Facebook page and watch the little video. I did a little recording of it.
Awesome.
Deep Space Nine loves us.
So our first shout out on the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first one. So that's about it for us. For our Trek techs, Heather Jordan and Kat R. King. For Cirroc Lofton, Aron Eisenberg, Russ Haslidge. And for Michael Chiklis, you owe me one, Aron. I'm Ryan T. Husk. Always remember the 7th rule, like Odo and Quark do.
Keep your ears open.
Yeah.